She was humiliated when her card got declined, until a billionaire stranger said she's with me. The alarm was a betrayal. It sliced through the dark at 4:30 in the morning, a shrill, digital scream that meant my first job was waiting. I slapped it quiet, my body already aching with a fatigue that felt less like tiredness and more like a stain soaked deep into my bones. This was my life. Sienna Blake, 27 years old and a professional juggler. My first act was the diner. I'd be there by 5:30, smelling of stale coffee and industrial-strength bleach before the sun even thought about grazing the Chicago skyline. I'd sling hash browns and refill coffee for commuters who looked through me, all while dodging the clammy hands and sour breath of my boss, Stan. He was a man who believed managing meant breathing down your neck until you wanted to scream. My second act started at 6 in the evening, after I'd picked up my daughter, Ava, from my neighbor's apartment, made dinner, and read Goodnight Moon twice. I'd leave Ava with Mrs. Petrov, who'd watch her sleep, and I'd head downtown again. This time, I was invisible, a ghost with a cleaning cart, wiping down the glass-walled conference rooms and empty cubicles of a high-tech finance firm. I'd get home just after midnight, sleep for 4 hours, and do it all again. 2 jobs, 1 daughter, 0 help. But today was different. Today, the exhaustion felt lighter, buzzed with a secret energy, because today, Ava turned 6. My little girl, my reason for breathing. She was a spark of impossible light in my gray, threadbare world. She wanted only one thing for her birthday, a princess cake from La Petite Reine, a bakery downtown she'd pointed at once when we were on the bus, a place with spun sugar castles and frosting that looked like silk, a place we had no business even looking at. For 2 months, I had saved every spare dollar from a tip. Every time I skipped lunch, every coin found in the sofa cushions, I'd tucked it all into a faded envelope labeled Ava. It wasn't much, but I'd counted it last night. $53 and change. It had to be enough. I was going to walk in there, buy that ridiculous, beautiful cake, and see my daughter's face light up. That image was the only thing pulling me through the day. Stan was on a tear before I even clocked in. "Blake, you're 2 minutes late," he grunted, not looking up from his order pad. He smelled like microwave sausage. "Sorry, Stan, the L was held up at Belmont House." "Excuses, the 5 top in the corner needs coffee, and they look crabby. Move." I moved. I smiled until my face ached. I refilled cups, cleared plates, and ignored the way Stan's eyes lingered on my backside when he thought I wasn't looking. The hours dragged by like weights on a chain. At 2:00, my shift finally ended. I ripped off my apron, the smell of grease clinging to my hair, and practically ran to the train. I had just enough time to get the cake and be back in time to pick up Ava. The bell above the door of La Petite Reine chimed, a delicate silver sound. The air inside was warm and thick with the scent of melted chocolate, butter, and vanilla. It was the smell of comfort, of money. Women in expensive coats chatted at small marble tables, their laughter as light as the pastries on their plates. I suddenly felt my secondhand jeans and the cheap fabric of my thin jacket. I clutched the envelope in my pocket. I found it in the glass case. It was smaller than the others, a perfect circle of pale pink frosting with delicate white piping and a single, elegant sugar rose on top. The tag read, "Rosewater chiffon." My heart did a stupid little flip. It was perfect. I waited in line, my palms sweating. The cashier, a young woman with sharp eyeliner and an even sharper expression of boredom, was ringing up a woman ahead of me who was buying 3 massive boxes of pastries without even asking the price. Then it was my turn. "Just this one, please," I said, my voice coming out too quiet. I pointed at the pink cake. The cashier slid it expertly into a white box with a gold logo. "Anything else?" "No, that's all. Thank you." She rang it up, $49.50. I breathed out, just enough. I pulled out my debit card. I always tried the card first, just in case a check had cleared faster than I expected. It was a stupid habit, a little prayer to a god that never listened. I slid it into the chip reader. The machine paused. Beep! The small screen flashed, declined. A flush of heat crawled up my neck. Oh, that's strange. Can you try it again? I just made a deposit. I lied. The words tasted like ash. The cashier's painted-on smile didn't move, but her eyes went flat. She sighed, a small, impatient puff of air, and ran the card again. The woman behind me in the fur-trimmed coat huffed and checked her watch. A man behind her shifted his weight, his briefcase bumping my back. Beep! Declined. The heat was in my face now, a raging fire of humiliation. My hands started to tremble. I'm so sorry, I stammered. Pulling the card out, I fumbled for the envelope in my pocket, my fingers clumsy. I have cash. I pulled the envelope out, the crumpled bills. I started counting them onto the counter. 10, 20, 30, 35, 40, 41, 42, 43. I stopped. I'd miscounted. Or maybe I'd forgotten the cost of the bus pass I'd had to buy yesterday. $43. I was $6.50 short. I looked up, my vision blurring. The cashier was staring at my pathetic pile of ones and fives with open disgust. The woman behind me sighed, loudly this time. Ma'am, do you have enough or not? There are other people waiting. I'm sorry. I thought I have to put it back. I'm so sorry. My voice broke. I started to gather the bills, my face burning so badly I thought I might pass out. I wanted to disappear, just sink right through the pristine tile floor. I was backing away from the counter, the white box still sitting there, a monument to my failure. Don't put it back. The voice was deep. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the bakery's quiet chatter like a razor. I stopped. A man had moved from beside the door. I hadn't even noticed him. He was tall, dressed in a dark tailored coat that probably cost more than my apartment. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the cashier. His eyes were the color of a winter sky, cold and clear and utterly unmoving. He stepped up to the register, beside me, and pulled a card from his wallet. It was black, matte. He didn't tap. He didn't slide. He just handed it to the cashier. I'll take this, and whatever she's having, he said, his voice a low rumble. The cashier, who'd been so impatient with me, suddenly looked flustered. Sir? The man finally turned his head, just slightly, to look at me. His gaze was intense, analytical. It didn't feel kind. It felt heavy. I can't, I whispered, shaking my head. Please, no, I can't let you. He ignored me, and he looked back at the cashier, his expression unchanged. There's a problem? No, sir, of course not, she stammered, taking the card. The woman in the fur coat was now staring, her mouth slightly open. The whole line had gone silent. The man looked at me fully then. His face was all sharp angles, dark hair, and a stillness that was more intimidating than any anger could be. He saw the tears welling in my eyes. He saw the shame. The cashier, her hands now shaking, tried to hand him the bag. Sir, It's not for me, he gestured toward me. The cashier held the bag out to me, confused. I just stared at it. She's with me, the man said. The words hung in the air. It wasn't an explanation. It was a statement, a fact. It ended the conversation. The cashier pushed the bag toward me. Here. I took it. My fingers brushed the clean white paper. I looked up at the stranger, my throat so tight I couldn't speak. Thank you, I finally choked out. It was a whisper. He just held my gaze for a second longer. A flicker of something I couldn't name passed through those cold eyes. Then he nodded. Once. A short, dismissive gesture. I turned and fled. I didn't walk. I ran out of that bakery, the stupid little bell chiming my humiliating exit. The cold Chicago wind hit my hot face, and the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over, freezing on my cheeks. I didn't look back. I just ran for the train, clutching a $6 cake that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was so blinded by shame. I never saw the black SUV idling at the curb just down the street. I never saw the man exit the bakery moments later, get into the back seat, and watch me until I disappeared around the corner. Ava loved the cake. Her eyes went wide when I opened the box, her little hands flying to her mouth. A princess cake. You got it. Mommy, you got the princess cake. She didn't see the chip in the plate. She didn't see the threadbare couch or the crack in our apartment window that I'd sealed with packing tape. She just saw the magic. I stuck a single candle in the center. We sang Happy Birthday, just the two of us, our voices echoing a little in the small room. I watched her blow out the candle, her cheeks puffed out, her eyes squeezed shut in concentration. "What did you wish for, baby?" I asked, cutting her a slice. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true," she giggled, bouncing on the cushion. I smiled, a real smile this time. This was why I did it. This was worth all of it. Later, after she was asleep, her belly full of cake and her new coloring book, my other, much more affordable gift, tucked beside her, I sat on the sofa. The silence of the apartment descended, and the shame I'd been holding at bay came flooding back. I cried. I cried for my daughter, who deserved a life where a birthday cake wasn't a financial crisis. I cried for myself, for the dreams I'd once had, an interior design course, a small business, a life that wasn't a minute-by-minute struggle for survival. And I cried with a strange, burning humiliation for what happened at that bakery. "She's with me." The words echoed in my head. He hadn't said it to be kind. He'd said it to end the scene, to quiet the disruption. I was a problem to be solved, a stray dog to be dealt with. He had paid for my cake like someone tossing a coin into a beggar's cup, and I had taken it. I wiped my face, the gratitude and the shame warring inside me until I just felt empty. The next day, the feeling of being unsettled didn't leave. It followed me as I walked Ava to her school, a small public school 6 blocks away. The morning was bright and cold. I held her mittened hand in mine, listening to her chatter about her new best friend and a boy who ate glue. I felt it about 3 blocks in, a prickle on the back of my neck, the feeling of being watched. I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. Just a city bus and a few people walking. "Mommy, look! A doggy!" Ava pointed. I looked, and that's when I saw it. A black car, sleek and expensive, parked halfway down the block. It was the kind of car that didn't belong in my neighborhood. It looked like polished obsidian. I turned away, my heart giving a strange kick. Paranoia? I was just tired. We kept walking. At the next corner, I glanced back again. The car was still there, but it was closer. It was moving, crawling along the curb at our walking pace. A cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. I gripped Ava's hand. "Come on, sweetie. Let's play a game. Let's see how fast we can walk to the corner." "Yay, a race!" We hurried, our boots slipping on the frosty pavement. I didn't look back again until I'd pushed Ava through the school gates, given her a kiss, and watched her join the line of children. As the gate clanged shut, I turned. The black car was parked directly across the street. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. It just sat there, idling, waiting. I turned and walked away, my legs unsteady. I walked for 2 blocks, my heart hammering against my ribs. I ducked into a bodega, my breath catching in my throat. I waited a full minute, pretending to look at the chips, then peeked out the window. The car was gone. I let out a shaky breath. It was nothing. A coincidence? Just a rich person lost in the wrong part of town. But the feeling didn't go away. That evening, I was back at the diner. The dinner rush was chaos. Stan was yelling, the cook was ringing the bell, and my feet felt like 2 burning blocks of cement. "Blake, pick up table 4, Stan barked. I grabbed the plates, balancing them up my arm. The bell over the diner door jingled. I didn't look up. "Be right with you," I called out, dropping the plates at table 4. When I turned back, my order pad in hand, I froze. He was standing there, the man from the bakery. He wasn't wearing the heavy coat. He was in a dark, perfectly fitted suit that made him look even more imposing in the cheap, fluorescent light of the diner. His cold eyes scanned the room, dismissing the booths, the counter, Stan, and then they landed on me. He didn't smile. He just walked to the corner booth, my section, and sat down. The entire diner seemed to go quiet for a second. Even Stan stopped yelling. "Hey, Blake," Stan hissed, nudging me. "You know that guy? He looks like money. Don't screw it up." My hands were shaking. I grabbed a menu and a glass of water. I walked over, my shoes squeaking on the linoleum. "Welcome to Stan's," I said, my voice thin. "Can I start you with something to drink?" He looked up at me. That same heavy gaze, it felt like he was cataloging me. The cheap polyester uniform, the coffee stain on my apron, the exhaustion in my eyes. "Black coffee," he said. His voice was just as I remembered, low, steady, and giving nothing away. "Coming right up." I hurried to the machine, my back rigid. I could feel him watching me, every single step. I poured the coffee, my hand trembling so badly I sloshed some into the saucer. I carried it back, my face burning. "Here you are," I said, setting it down. Are you ready to order?" "No." He just stared at the menu, but he wasn't reading it. He was just there, sitting, watching. I retreated to the server's station, pretending to wipe down the counter. For 20 minutes. He sat there. He took one sip of the coffee. He watched the diner. He watched the door. And mostly, he watched me. It wasn't a leer. It wasn't the way Stan looked at me. It was something else. Colder. More possessive. It was the way a man might watch a thing he'd just bought. Finally, he stood. He pulled his wallet out. I walked over. My nerves shot. "Just the coffee?" He nodded, placing a bill on the table. A 50. "Sir, I don't have change for this," I said, flustered. "I don't want change." He started to slide out of the booth. "Wait," I said, the word bursting out of me. "Yesterday, the cake, I can't." "It was a gift," he said, cutting me off. "I can't accept it. I can pay you back. I get paid on Friday. I can." He stopped and turned to me. We were close, just a few feet apart. He was so much taller than I'd realized. "It's done," he said. It was a dismissal. He placed his credit card on the table, on top of the $50 bill, for the coffee. Then he turned and walked out. The bell jingled. I stared at the table, a $50 tip, and his card. He'd left his card. No, he'd paid with the card. He'd put the 50 on top of the receipt. I picked up the black card. The receipt was for $2.75. Tip $50. Total $52.75. The name on the card was embossed in stark, silver letters, Dante Romano. I was still standing there, holding the card, when Lila called. I'd been ignoring her texts all day. I picked up, hiding in the back hallway by the bathrooms. "Sienna, finally! How was the birthday? Did she love the cake?" "She loved it. Lee, it was perfect." "You sound weird. What's wrong? Did Stan schedule you for another double?" "No, something weird happened yesterday. And it just got weirder." I told her. I told her about the card declining, the humiliation, and I told her about the man, the cold eyes, the suit, the way he'd just paid. "And Lee," I whispered. "He just came into the diner. He sat in my section. He left a $50 tip and paid with his card. His name is Dante Romano." There was a long silence on the other end. "Lila, you there?" "Sienna," she said, her voice suddenly sharp and serious. "Hang up the phone. Hang up the phone right now and Google that name." "What? Why?" "Google him. Now. Call me back." The line went dead. A new kind of fear, different from the alley, different from Stan, trickled down my spine. I finished my shift on autopilot, my mind miles away. That night, long after Ava was asleep, I sat in the dark, my phone screen the only light. I typed in the name, Dante Romano. The results flooded in. Forbes articles, Chicago Tribune business sections, pictures of him in a suit, looking exactly as he had in the diner. Cold and severe. Billionaire tech mogul Dante Romano, CEO of Romano Systems. The reclusive genius behind the Aegis security platform. Romano Systems lands massive government contract. He was worth billions. With a B, a man like that had bought my daughter's birthday cake. A man like that had sat in Stan's greasy diner. I scrolled further. The headlines changed. They became whispers. Blog posts, society gossip columns, and articles that were taken down almost as fast as they were put up. The Romano family's dark Chicago roots. Is Tech's golden boy tied to the outfit? Dante Romano, from mob scion to tech titan? My blood went cold. Romano, the Romano crime family, one of the oldest, most notorious names in Chicago. The articles hinted he was the clean one, the son who had supposedly broken away and gone legitimate, building a tech empire. But the rumors were persistent. They said he was more ruthless than his father ever was. They said his Aegis security system was built on mob principles: protection, information, and absolute control. This was the man who had bought my daughter's cake. This was the man who had looked at me and said, "She's with me." I felt sick. The next night, I was walking home from my office cleaning job. It was just after midnight. I was exhausted, my mind numb. I'd taken a shortcut, a narrow alley between two warehouses that shaved 10 minutes off my walk. I'd taken it 100 times. I heard the footsteps behind me. I clutched the strap of my purse, my heart leaping into my throat. I walked faster. The footsteps sped up. I was halfway down the alley. A single, flickering streetlight cast long, terrifying shadows. A hand grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. A man, big and smelling of stale liquor and sweat, shoved me against the brick wall. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs. "Gimme the purse," he growled, his face too close. He had a small, jagged scar on his chin. "Please," I gasped. "There's nothing in it, just $7. "Don't lie to me, bitch." He yanked the purse strap, pulling it so hard it burned my shoulder. "Give me the money." "I'm telling you," I cried, tears of terror springing to my eyes. He raised his other hand. He was going to hit me. "Hey." It wasn't Dante's voice. It was someone else. The mugger froze. He looked over his shoulder. Two men were standing at the mouth of the alley. They weren't in suits. They were dressed in dark jeans and jackets, and they were built like refrigerators. They just stood there, blocking the only way out. "This ain't your business," my attacker snarled, letting go of me to puff out his chest. The two men didn't say a word. They just started walking toward us. They moved in perfect silent unison. It was terrifying. The mugger looked from them to me. He realized he was trapped. He made a desperate lunge for the other end of the alley, a dead end with a chain-link fence. He never made it. The two men were on him in a second. It wasn't a fight. It was a disassembly. It was fast, brutal, and sickeningly quiet. I heard a grunt, the sound of a fist hitting flesh, a sharp crack, and the mugger crumpled to the ground. He didn't move. I was pressed against the wall, my hand over my mouth, sobbing. The two men looked at him. Then they looked at me. They didn't smile. They didn't offer to help. They just nodded, like they'd finished a job. And then they walked back to the mouth of the alley and melted into the shadows. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I sat there for a minute, maybe two, just trying to breathe. Then a shadow fell over me. I looked up, my heart stopping. Dante Romano was standing in the mouth of the alley, the flickering streetlight behind him. He wasn't in a suit. He was in dark pants and a black coat, his hands shoved in his pockets. He walked toward me, his footsteps echoing on the wet pavement. He stopped a few feet away. There was a fresh, dark bruise high on his cheekbone, and his knuckles were split and bleeding. He had been here. He had been part of it. He looked at me, then at the man on the ground, then back at me. "You're all right," he said. It wasn't a question. I just nodded, unable to speak. He held out a hand. It was the hand that was bleeding. I stared at it. "Get up," he said, his voice soft, but still a command. I took his hand. His grip was impossibly strong, and his skin was warm against my icy, trembling fingers. He pulled me to my feet like I weighed nothing. I swayed, my knees weak. He didn't let go. He just held my hand, his grip steadying me. "I'll walk you home." He didn't ask where I lived. He just started walking, pulling me gently with him. I stumbled alongside him, my mind a blank. Buzzing fog of terror and confusion. We walked the 3 blocks to my apartment in total silence. At my building's front door, under the flickering porch light, I finally let go of his hand. "You," I started, my voice hoarse. "Those men, that was—" "You were in trouble." He cut me off, his gaze fixed on my face. How did you know where I was?" He didn't answer. He just looked at my building, his expression dark. I looked at his hand. The blood was dripping slowly onto the pavement. "You're bleeding," I whispered. He glanced at his knuckles, indifferent. "It's nothing." "You should clean it. It looks bad." He just looked at me. The woman who had taken the cake, the woman who had cried over his $50 tip, was gone. In her place was someone who had just seen a man taken apart in an alley, and the man who had ordered it was standing on her doorstep. And all I could think was that he was bleeding. "Come inside," I said, the words out before I could stop them. "I have a first aid kit. You should let me clean your hand." He held my gaze for a long time. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of options. I was inviting a shark into my fishbowl. I knew it. But he had saved me. "Finally," he nodded. "Once—" I fumbled with my keys, my hands still shaking. I pushed open the door to my tiny apartment and stepped inside. He followed me. He stood in my small living room, and the entire space seemed to shrink. He was a creature of shadows and steel, and he looked impossibly out of place next to Ava's drawings taped on the wall and my threadbare sofa. "Please," I said, my voice trembling. "Sit down. I'll get the kit." He didn't sit, just stood by the door, watching me as I went to the bathroom and grabbed the plastic first aid box from under the sink. When I came back, he was still standing there. "You can sit," I said again, motioning to the sofa. He sat. He perched on the edge of the cushion, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. I sat beside him, our knees almost touching. The air was thick with unspoken things. "Give me your hand," I whispered. He held it out, palm up. I opened the kit and took out an antiseptic wipe. My fingers trembled as I gently took his hand. His skin was rough, calloused, but warm. I dabbed at the split skin on his knuckles. He didn't even flinch. "This might sting." "It's fine." We were quiet. The only sounds were the hum of the old refrigerator and the distant wail of a siren. I was sitting on my couch at 1 a.m, cleaning the blood off the knuckles of a billionaire with rumored mob ties who had just saved me from a mugger. "Why were you there?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer for a long time. I concentrated on his hand, wrapping a bandage around it. My fingers brushed his wrist. "I was nearby," he said finally. "That car, the one following me this morning? That was you, wasn't it?" He watched me, his expression unreadable. "Yes." "Why?" I looked up, meeting his cold eyes. "Why are you doing this? The cake, the diner, following me." "You needed help." "People like me need help every day," I said, my voice shaking with a sudden, strange anger. "People like you don't notice." "I noticed," he said, his voice quiet. He looked around the small apartment. His eyes rested on the pink cake box, still on the counter. Then they moved to a framed photo on the bookshelf. It was me and Ava, last summer at the park. "She's your daughter," he stated. "Yes, Ava, she's 6. He nodded, looking back at his bandaged hand. I'd finished. My hand was still resting near his on the cushion. "Why 2 jobs?" he asked. The question was so simple, so direct. It caught me off guard. Her father, he left before she was born, I said, the old shame twisting in my gut. There's no one else. It's just me. I do what I have to. And the design school? My head snapped up. What? You were enrolled in the community college design program. You dropped out 3 years ago. A cold dread, colder than the alley, washed over me. How do you know that? He looked at me, and for the first time, the ice in his eyes seemed to crack. It wasn't warmth. It was something raw, a shared understanding of loss. I know what it's like, he said, his voice a low rasp, to have everything taken from you. He didn't say anything else. He just looked at me, and I looked at him. And in that moment, in my tiny apartment with the sound of the city humming outside, the space between us disappeared. I wasn't a waitress and he wasn't a billionaire. We were just two people who understood what it meant to be alone. He stood up. You should lock your door. Don't take the alley again. Thank you, I said, standing with him. For tonight. He nodded, his hand on the doorknob. He paused, his back to me. That man, he said, his voice hard. He won't bother you again. And then he was gone. I locked the deadbolt, my heart hammering a strange, new rhythm against my ribs. I leaned against the door, the bandage wrapper still clutched in my hand. I had a feeling the mugger was the least of my problems. I had just invited Dante Romano into my life, and I was terrified he was never going to leave. I didn't sleep. I sat on my sofa, wrapped in the thin blanket I usually kept for Ava, and watched the gray Chicago dawn seep through the blinds. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. The scrape of a newspaper being delivered, the jingle of a neighbor's keys, they all sounded like threats. Dante Romano, his name was a boulder in my stomach. I'd invited a man who shed his family's mob ties like a snake shedding its skin into my home. A man who, according to the whispers on the internet, had built his legitimate empire using the same ruthless tactics that had made his family infamous. And he knew where I lived. He knew about my design classes. He hadn't just saved me. He had been watching me. The black car hadn't been a coincidence. It had been surveillance. The men in the alley hadn't been a lucky break. They had been his. But the biggest, most terrifying question hammering at my skull was why? Why me? The next morning, I walked Ava to school, my head on a swivel. Every parked car looked like the black obsidian SUV. Every man in a dark coat looked like one of his soldiers. I was seeing shadows everywhere. On the way back, I forced myself to walk past the alley. I had to know. My stomach churned, but I pushed forward in the dirty, bright light of day. It was just a gap between two buildings, littered with trash. The man from last night was gone. There was no sign of a struggle. It was clean, too clean. Then I saw it, tucked just behind a rusted dumpster, half hidden by a soggy pizza box, my purse. My heart stopped. I nudged it with my toe, then snatched it up. The strap was broken where the man had yanked it. I fumbled with the zipper, my hands shaking. I pulled it open. My cracked phone was there, my keys, and my thin wallet. I opened the wallet, my breath held tight. The $7 I'd had, a 5 and 2 ones, were still tucked inside. I felt dizzy, leaning against the cold brick wall. He hadn't wanted my money. He hadn't wanted my phone. He had wanted me. It wasn't a mugging, it was an abduction. And Dante's men hadn't just intervened, they had been there waiting. I felt sick. This wasn't protection, this was a war, and I was standing in the middle of it. I ran the rest of the way home, locked the deadbolt, and slid the chain. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, staring at the $7. I was suspicious. No, I was past suspicious. I was terrified. Dante hadn't saved me from a random threat. He had saved me from a threat that likely existed only because of him. 2 days passed. I went to work. I smiled at customers. I ignored Stan's greasy innuendos. I scrubbed toilets at the finance firm, and every second, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every time the phone rang, I jumped, Every time a car slowed down, my heart hammered. He didn't come. There were no black cars, no silent watchers. By the third day, I had almost convinced myself it was over, that I had been a brief, strange project for a bored billionaire. I was picking up Ava's toys on Saturday afternoon, trying to figure out how to stretch $20 into a week's worth of groceries, when the knock came. It wasn't a normal knock, it was a heavy, solid thud, just twice. I froze. Ava looked up from her coloring book. "Who's that, Mommy?" "Stay there, sweetie." I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Dante Romano was standing in my hallway. He wasn't in a suit. He was dressed like he had been in the alley. Dark, expensive jeans, a black cashmere sweater, and the same dark coat. He wasn't looking at the door. He was looking down the hall, as if checking for threats. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding. I should keep it locked. I should tell him to go away. I should call the police. But what would I say? There's a billionaire outside my door who saved me from a kidnapping I can't prove? I slowly, with trembling fingers, slid the chain back and undid the deadbolt. I opened the door just a few inches. "Hello?" My voice was a weak whisper. He turned. His cold eyes met mine. He didn't smile. "Sienna?" he said. It wasn't a question. He was holding 2 large, insulated grocery bags, the kind from a high-end market I'd never even dared to enter. What are you doing here?" "You're out of milk," he said. It was so mundane, so domestic. It threw me completely. "What?" "And bread, and eggs." He nodded toward the bags. "May I come in?" He didn't wait for an answer. He just stepped forward, forcing me to open the door wider. He walked past me into my living room, bringing the cold air and the scent of expensive wool with him. "Mommy, who is it?" Ava called, hopping off the sofa. She rounded the corner and stopped, staring at this giant, dark man in our tiny apartment. Dante stopped, too. He looked at Ava. His entire body, which had been so tense, so rigid, seemed to freeze. He just stared at her. His face, usually so blank and cold, softened. It was a change so subtle I wasn't sure I'd seen it, like a glacier cracking just a fraction. Ava, my shy, cautious daughter who hid behind my legs for Mrs. Petrov, just tilted her head. She smiled. "You're very tall," she announced. Dante blinked. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched one corner of his mouth. "You're very observant," where he replied, his voice a low rumble. He turned and walked into my kitchen. Placing the bags on the counter, I followed him, dumbstruck. You can't just show up here with groceries," I stammered. He turned, leaning back against my counter. He crossed his arms, and the small space felt even smaller. "Why not?" Because I'm not, this isn't a charity case. Mr. Romano." "Dante," he corrected me. He started unpacking the bags. It wasn't just milk and eggs. It was fresh pasta, organic chicken, vegetables I hadn't been able to afford in months, high-end coffee, and a box of Swiss chocolates. "I don't want this," I said, my voice rising. "I don't want any of this. I want you to tell me what's going on. The mugging, the man. He left my money, Dante. He wasn't robbing me." Dante's hands stopped. He was holding a carton of orange juice. He slowly placed it on the counter. His face went cold again. "I told you," he said, "you were in trouble." I handled it. "You handled it? Just like you handled my daughter's cake. You don't get to just bulldoze into my life with your money and your men." "Mommy, is that chocolate?" Ava had crept into the kitchen, her eyes wide on the box he'd set down. Dante looked at Ava, then at me. He broke his gaze first. He picked up the box of chocolates, opened it, and offered it to her. "Just one," he said. Ava looked to me for permission. I was so angry, so confused. I just nodded mutely. She took a small one, unwrapped the foil, and popped it in her mouth. "Thank you, Mr. Tallman," she said, her cheeks full. "You're welcome," he murmured. He finished unpacking. He was silent. He revealed nothing about himself, nothing about what had happened. He just put my new groceries into my old refrigerator. The silence was deafening. And I broke. I don't know why. Maybe it was the relief of having food. Maybe it was the terror of the last few days. Maybe it was just his solid, silent presence in my kitchen. He left before she was born, I whispered, leaning against the doorframe. Dante stopped, his back to me. Ava's father, he said he wasn't ready. He said it was my mistake. I haven't heard from him in almost 7 years. Dante slowly turned. He just watched me. He didn't pity me. He just listened. I was going to be a designer, I said, the words tumbling out. I was in school. I was good at it. I loved it. I loved making spaces feel like homes. Not like this, not like a box. I gestured around my own cramped apartment. Then I got pregnant, and the money ran out, and the dreams. You pack them away. You pack them away until you forget what they even looked like. I was crying, stupid, silent tears. I was mortified, wiping them away with the back of my hand. "I'm sorry," I mumbled. "You didn't come here to listen to this." "What did you want to design?" he asked. His voice was quiet. The question caught me off guard. "What?" "Your dream. What did you want to design?" "Homes," I said without thinking. "Real homes. For families. Places that felt safe. Warm. Places where kids could grow." He nodded, absorbing that. He looked around my apartment again, but this time his gaze wasn't critical. It was analytical. He was seeing the space, seeing the way I'd tried to use a cheap rug and colorful pillows to make it warm. "You're still good at it," he said. It was a simple fact. He pushed off the counter. He walked to the door, stepping around Ava, who was back to her coloring. He paused, his hand on the knob. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He didn't take out money. He took out a business card. It was thick, black, with just a name and a number. No title, no company. "For emergencies, Mo," he said, holding it out. "Only for emergencies." I looked at the card, then at him. "Is that what this is? Dante? Are you my emergency?" His eyes held mine. "I'm whatever you need me to be." He placed the card on the small table by the door and left. I didn't touch the card for 4 days. I just let it sit there, a black rectangle of terrifying potential. Then the emergency came. It was 3 a.m. I woke up because Ava was coughing, a dry, barking cough that sounded like a seal. I rushed to her bedside. She was burning up. Her little body was radiating heat, and she was struggling to breathe. "Mommy," she whimpered, "it hurts. I can't catch my breath." Croup. She'd had it once before, but never this bad. I ran to the bathroom, turned the shower on hot to make steam, and carried her in. We sat on the floor for 20 minutes, but it wasn't helping. Her breathing was getting shallower, a high-pitched wheezing sound with every inhale. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my heart. This was beyond a steam shower. I grabbed my phone to call 911, an ambulance, the emergency room, the bill that would destroy me for the next year. And then my eyes landed on the black card. For emergencies only. My hand was shaking. This was an emergency. This was my daughter. I dialed the number. It rang once. Yes, his voice. No sleep in it, just sharp, immediate and alert. "Dante?" I was sobbing. "Dante, it's Sienna. It's Ava. She can't breathe. She's burning up. I don't know what to do." "What's her temperature?" he asked. Calm, so calm it steadied me. 104, and she's wheezing. The steam isn't working. "I'm sending someone. Lock your door. Do not open it for anyone but me. I'm 10 minutes away." The line went dead. I didn't know what sending someone meant, but 10 minutes later, exactly as he'd said, there was that solid, heavy knock. I ran to the door. "Dante?" "It's me." His voice came through the wood. I fumbled with the locks and threw the door open. He was there, in a coat and dark sweater, as if he'd just been waiting, and behind him was a woman in scrubs, carrying a black medical bag. "This is Dr. Alviani," Dante said, his eyes finding me in the dark hallway. "She's the best pediatric ER chief in the city." "Sienna," the doctor said, her voice kind but all business. "Where is she?" "In her room," I pointed, moving aside. The doctor brushed past me. Dante stepped in just behind her. He didn't follow the doctor. He just stood in the living room, his back to the door, a solid, unmoving guardian. I hurried into Ava's room. "Doctor." Alviani was already listening to Ava's chest. "Okay, sweetie, I'm Doctor Elena. We're going to get you breathing better." She pulled out a nebulizer from her bag, a portable nebulizer. She loaded it with a vial of medicine. "Mom, hold this for her." I held the mask over Ava's face. The hissing sound of the machine filled the room. Within 5 minutes, Ava's wheezing started to ease. Her breathing, while still ragged, was deeper. "It's a severe case of laryngotracheobronchitis," the doctor said, packing a syringe. "The croup, I'm giving her a shot of dexamethasone. It's a steroid. It will bring the swelling in her airway down almost immediately." She was fast, efficient, and kind. She gave Ava the shot, and Ava, who usually screamed, just whimpered. "There we go," the doctor said, stroking Ava's damp hair. "The fever will break in an hour. The cough will linger, but the danger is past. I'll leave 2 more doses of the nebulizer solution just in case, but she should be fine by morning." She stood up and packed her bag. I followed her out, my legs weak with relief. Dante was standing in the hallway, right outside Ava's door. He hadn't moved. He was just waiting. "Doctor." Alviani looked at him and nodded. "She's stable. The crisis is over. I'll be in my car if you need anything else." "Thank you, Elena," Dante said. She nodded at me. "She'll be just fine. Sienna, you did the right thing." She let herself out. The door clicked shut, and the apartment was silent again. Except for the sound of Ava's now regular breathing, I stood in the dark hallway, staring at the man who had just saved my daughter. The adrenaline drained away, leaving me empty and shaking. I couldn't form words. I started to slide down the wall. My knees just gave out. Dante was there in an instant. He didn't try to stop my slide. He just sank down with me, sitting on the floor of my hallway, his back against the opposite wall. We sat there in the dark. "Thank you," I whispered. My voice was raw. I was so scared." "I know," he said. His voice was soft. He reached out, not for my hand, he put his hand on my shoulder. His grip was heavy, warm. It wasn't sexual. It was grounding. It was an anchor. It said, "I am here. You are not alone." I leaned my head back against the wall and finally let myself cry. I cried from the terror of the night, from the exhaustion of the last 7 years, from the relief that she was okay. He didn't say anything, and he didn't shush me. He didn't pat my back. He just sat there in the dark with me, his hand a solid, unmoving weight on my shoulder, until I was done. It was the most intimate moment of my life. Ava was, as the doctor predicted, almost completely fine by morning. When she woke up, she asked for pancakes. I had never been so happy to make pancakes in my life. Dante had left sometime before dawn. I'd fallen asleep on the floor outside her room, and when I woke up, he was gone. He came back that afternoon. I opened the door, and he was there. This time, he was holding a single, ridiculously large stuffed animal. It was a fuzzy, golden brown bear, but it was wearing a little beret and a red and white striped shirt. It looked French. "For the patient," he said. I crossed my arms. The crisis was over, the adrenaline was gone, and the suspicion was back. "Dante, you can't—" "It's a gift," he said, holding it out. "No, I mean it. I can't—" "You can't buy us. You can't just solve every problem by sending a doctor or buying groceries or bringing toys from where? Paris?" He stiffened. "It's a bear." It's not just a bear, I insisted, my voice rising. It's a transaction. I don't want to be in your debt. I can't ever repay you for last night. I know that, but this is different. I don't want you buying my daughter's affection. His face hardened. The ice came back into his eyes, sharp and cold. You think that's what this is? I don't know what it is, I cried. That's the problem. You're this ghost. You show up, you fix things, you know things you shouldn't know, and you tell me nothing. I'm tired of being your secret project. Dante. He stared at me for a long, cold moment. His jaw was tight. Keep the bear, he said, his voice flat. He dropped it at my feet. Or don't. He turned and walked away. I watched him go, my heart aching with a strange mixture of anger and regret. I kicked the bear inside and slammed the door. The rain started an hour later, a cold, miserable Chicago downpour. I was making Ava soup when the knock came again. I stormed to the door, ready for another fight. I pulled it open, and my anger evaporated. He was standing there, soaked. The rain was running off his dark hair and dripping from his coat. He wasn't the cold billionaire. He looked lost, defeated. You're wet, I said, stupidly. I don't know how, he said. His voice was raw, desperate. It cut right through me. I don't know how to do this. Do what? I whispered. I protect. I provide. It's what I know, my father, my world. We don't give. We secure. We acquire. We control. He looked up at me, his eyes dark with a pain I didn't understand. You won't take my money. You won't take my gifts. What else can I give, Sienna? What else can I give? If I can't give what I know best, protection. I stared at him, the rain dripping from his chin, the desperate honesty in his eyes. I didn't think. I just moved. I reached out and put my hand on his chest. Through the wet coat, I could feel the solid, steady beat of his heart. You can give. You, I whispered. You can just be here. Talk to me. He looked down at my hand, then back to my face. He slowly, hesitantly, covered my hand with his. His was large, calloused, and so warm. I'm not good at that, he said. Me neither. And then I don't know who moved first. Maybe I leaned in. Maybe he did. But suddenly his other hand was on my face, his thumb stroking my cheekbone. His touch was hesitant, almost questioning. Then he kissed me. It wasn't a soft kiss. It was a collision. It was desperate and hungry, like a man who had been starving. His lips were cold from the rain, but his mouth was hot. He tasted like the storm and something else, something metallic and male. He kissed me like he was staking a claim, like he was trying to pour all of his unspoken words, his protection, his control, his need, right into me. My hands went from his chest to his shoulders, gripping his wet coat. He backed me into the apartment, kicking the door shut behind him. The sound of it closing echoed in the small room. His hand moved from my cheek to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair, holding me steady as his mouth devoured mine. It was breathless. It was overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning, and he was the only solid thing in the universe. This was not the gentle comfort in the hallway. This was raw. This was possession. And it terrified me. I tore my mouth away, gasping for air. I pushed against his chest. Dante, stop! He froze. His breathing was as ragged as mine. His forehead rested against mine. His eyes closed. I can't, I whispered, my whole body trembling. I can't do this. This is too fast. This is too much. He pulled back, just enough to look at me. His eyes were dark, his pupils blown wide. He saw the fear in my face. I don't want this, I lied, my voice shaking. I don't want to be rescued. Dante, I don't want to be another one of your acquisitions. His expression shuddered. He let go of me. Stepping back, the cold, controlled mask was back. He looked at me, his gaze sweeping over my trembling lips and my flushed face. You already were, he said. his voice soft but full of grim finality. He turned, opened the door, and walked back out into the rain. I stood there for a long time, my fingers pressed to my mouth. I could still taste him. The next day, I went to pay my rent. I was 3 days late, but I had the partial payment I'd agreed on with my landlord, Mr. Henderson. I walked into the management office in the lobby of our building. "Sienna," the receptionist said, her face pinched. "Mr. Henderson isn't in." "Oh," I said, holding out the envelope. "Well, can I just leave this for him? It's the partial, like we talked about." She wouldn't look at me. "I can't accept that. Sienna, the file was... it was pulled by legal." A cold dread trickled down my spine. "What do you mean, pulled by legal? I have an agreement." "Not anymore." She slid a piece of paper across the counter. It was a formal notice, an eviction. "But he can't," I stammered. "He said we had an agreement." "That was before the lawsuit, dear." "The lawsuit?" My voice was a squeak. She handed me another envelope. "You were served. These are the copies." I tore it open. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the words. It was a lawsuit, filed against me, from the building's parent corporation. Allegations of property damage, endangerment, disturbances. I read the words, but they made no sense. This is insane. I've never even had a complaint. According to the file, there are 3 signed affidavits from other tenants about loud parties, strange men coming and going at all hours, and drug paraphernalia found in the hallway. "What? That's a lie. That's a complete lie." "I'm sorry, Sienna. It's out of our hands." I stumbled out of the office, the papers clutched in my hand, strange men coming and going, the doctor, Dante, his men. They hadn't just seen him. They had been told to see him. This wasn't my landlord. This was a corporate high-rise eviction. This was sophisticated. This was targeted. I ran back to my apartment, my mind reeling. I grabbed the black card from the table. I called him. He answered on the first ring. "Yes." "They're evicting me," I said, the words choked with panic and rage. They've filed a lawsuit. They're lying, Dante. They're saying I'm a drug dealer or a prostitute. They're saying there are strange men." There was a dead silence on the line. "Dante," I sobbed. "Where are you?" His voice was flat, deadly. "I'm in my apartment." "Stay there. Lock the door. Don't talk to anyone." The line went dead. 20 minutes later, he was at my door, and he didn't knock. I just felt him. I opened it. He was in a suit this time, crisp, dark, and terrifying. He walked past me and held out his hand for the papers. I gave them to him. He read them. His face was stone. He can't do this, right?" I whispered. "I can fight this." Dante folded the papers slowly, precisely. He looked at me, and his eyes were the coldest I had ever seen them. "This isn't your landlord. Sienna, this is a message." "A message? From who? For what?" He put the papers down. He looked at me, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen before. Regret. "You were right," he said. "This isn't a random attack. Someone from my world is trying to use you." He stepped closer. "They're using you to get to me." I stared at him, the full weight of his world crashing down on me. I wasn't his project. I wasn't his charity case. I was his weakness, and they had just found me. My world narrowed to the 4 walls of my apartment. I stared at the eviction notice, the legal paper, a death sentence. "Use me to get to you?" "They're testing my defenses," Dante said, his voice a low, cold vibration. "They see you. They see Ava. They see a lever." "So what does that mean?" I whispered, my blood turning to ice. They're going to... what?" "It means," he said, stepping toward me, "that you're not safe here. Not anymore." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, backing away, my hand instinctively going to the doorknob of Ava's room. "This is my home. This is your world. Dante, not mine. You brought this to my door. You fix it." "I am," he said. He was closer now, not touching me, but his presence was a physical weight. The lawsuit is real. The complaints are filed. They've poisoned this place. Even if I make it go away, they know where you are. They know where to press. They will use the city, child services. They will say you are an unfit mother, and they will use my name as the reason. I stopped breathing. It was right. The mention of strange men, the fabricated drug use. It was a perfect legal trap. They could take Ava. "You're not safe," he repeated, his eyes holding mine, "and I will not let them touch you." "So what?" I choked out. "You're moving me? Like a piece on a chessboard? I'm not your property. I'm not your prisoner." "You are under my protection," and he stated, as if it were an irrevocable fact. "That is all that matters. You'll pack a bag, for you and for Ava. We leave in 10 minutes. "And go where?" "A place they can't find. A place that belongs to me." He called it a safe house. That word felt cold, clinical. It wasn't a home. It was a holding cell. I protested. I argued. I even cried. But it was like shouting at a mountain. He was immovable. Well, I threw a few clothes into a duffel bag, my hands shaking with rage and terror. He went into Ava's room. I followed, ready to scream at him not to touch her. He was just standing by her bed, watching her sleep. My daughter, her face soft in the dim light, unaware of the sharks circling her world. He looked at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he very gently, almost reverently, scooped her up, blanket and all. She mumbled in her sleep and snuggled against his chest. That image broke me. I stopped fighting. I just grabbed my bag and followed him out. The condo was in the sky. It felt like we were on the moon. We'd ridden up in a silent, private elevator that opened directly into the apartment. The entire north wall was glass, a breathtaking, terrifying panorama of Lake Michigan, and the city lights spread out like a carpet of diamonds. The place was huge, minimalist and cold, white marble floors, gray furniture that looked like art, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. It was beautiful, but it had no soul. It was Dante. "There are 2 bedrooms," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast, empty space. "This one is yours." He carried Ava into the room and laid her on the bed. The bed was 4 times the size of my old one. He pulled the blanket up to her chin, his large, scarred hand lingering near her hair for just a second. I stood in the doorway, my duffel bag at my feet, feeling like a ghost. I was overwhelmed. The sheer, staggering wealth of it was suffocating. I felt sick with guilt. I had taken his help, and now I was living in his gilded cage. Ava, on the other hand, woke up the next morning and thought she was in heaven. "Mommy, look, the TV is in the wall," she shrieked, bouncing on the plush, dove-gray rug. "And the bathtub is a swimming pool. Can we live here forever?" Her words were a fresh stab of guilt. She was 6. She saw magic. I saw the price tag. It's just for a little while, baby," I said, my voice tight. Dante was there. He'd been there all night, sleeping on the sofa in the living room, though he looked as if he hadn't slept at all. He was standing in the kitchen, making coffee, real coffee, from a machine that looked like a sports car engine. "She likes it," he said, holding a cup out to me. I ignored it. "I can't stay here. Dante, I can't be your kept woman, your project. I have to pay you back. For the doctor, for the groceries, for this." He sipped his coffee, his eyes watching me over the rim. "I told you, you don't owe me anything." "I owe myself," I snapped. "I won't live on your charity. I'll get another job. You will do no such thing." He cut me off, his voice flat. "You will not leave this apartment unless I am with you. That is not negotiable." "So I'm a prisoner." "So you are safe." He set the cup down. "But you are right. You should not be my guest. You should be my employee." I blinked. "What?" "I'm expanding a new campus for Romano Systems in the West Loop. The architects have the building shell, but the interiors, they're cold. They look like this place." He gestured around the sterile room. "They lack A human element. I need someone to design the non-technical spaces, the lounges, the common areas, the rooftop garden, spaces that feel like homes. He used my own words from that first night in my apartment. "You're offering me a job?" I said, incredulous. You're hiring me as an interior consultant?" "I am," he said. "I've seen your old classwork, your sketches. Your mind doesn't work like my architect's. You see things, they don't. I need that." I was suspicious. It was too perfect. Is this a real job, or is this just another, more expensive way of handling me? He walked to the black briefcase I hadn't noticed by the door. He opened it and pulled out a folder. He handed it to me. It was a contract, a real one, for a lead design consultant, and the salary listed. I couldn't breathe. It was more than I made in 2 years at both my jobs. "This is," I stammered. "Dante, this is too much. I haven't done this in years. I'm not qualified." "You are the only one qualified," he said, his voice soft, "because you are the only one I trust to understand what I'm trying to build." He left for a meeting. I sat at the marble island staring at the contract. It was a lifeline. It was a golden chain. I signed it. Ava skipped over, drawing on a new pad of paper he'd somehow produced. "Mommy?" she asked, her voice innocent and bright. "Is Dante our new daddy?" My stomach clenched. "No, sweetie. He's Mommy's boss." "Oh," she said, seemingly satisfied. "Well, I like him. He's quiet, and he smells like the sky." I didn't know what the sky smelled like, but I knew what she meant. He smelled like cold air and expensive wool and something clean and dangerous. I threw myself into the work. It was an escape. He had blueprints delivered, piles of fabric swatches, catalogs. For the first time in 7 years, my mind was alive. I wasn't just surviving, I was creating. I sketched, I planned, I lost myself in colors and textures. Dante would come back late at night. He'd find me asleep on the sofa, surrounded by drawings. I'd wake up to find a blanket draped over me, and my sketches neatly piled on the table. A note in his sharp, black handwriting at the top? Good, but the lighting in Section C is too harsh. He was engaged. He was a partner. It was intoxicating. A week later, he came home early. I was in the kitchen trying to cook a real meal in the space-age oven, Ava at my feet. "I need you to come with me tonight," he said. No greeting. "Where?" I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. "A gala at the museum. It's for the new children's hospital wing. A lot of my competitors will be there. It's important that you're seen with me." My blood went cold. "A gala, like with people? Dante, no, I can't. Look at me. I have nothing to wear to a gala." "That's been handled," he said. He gestured to a long, black garment bag hanging by the door. "You bought me a dress." My voice was flat. "I acquired a uniform," he countered, using my own words. "You are my lead consultant. You are expected to be there." I felt the walls of the cage closing in. I was his employee. I was his date. I was a prop. The dress was stunning. It wasn't flashy. It was a deep midnight blue silk, simple, elegant, and cut with a precision that made me look not like a waitress. It made me look like I belonged. I hated that I loved it. When I walked out of the bedroom, he was standing by the glass wall, a black tux fitting him like armor. He turned. His eyes swept over me, once, a slow, appreciative, and deeply possessive inventory. He didn't speak for a full minute. "It'll do," he said, his voice a low growl. The museum was a sea of noise and flashing lights. Cameras went off as we stepped out of the black SUV. I felt my hands start to tremble. I wasn't made for this. Dante's hand found the small of my back, a solid, warm pressure. "Stay close," he murmured, "and don't believe a word you hear." I clung to his arm. The ballroom was enormous. Dripping with crystals and flowers, the air smelled of expensive perfume and champagne. Women in dresses that cost more than my college tuition drifted by, their eyes like chips of glass. They looked at me, then at Dante, and then at me again. Their whispers were like tiny, sharp knives. I felt like an imposter, a stray in a room full of polished predators. This was worse than the bakery. At the bakery, I was anonymous. Here, I was with him, which made me a target. Dante, I need some air, I whispered, my throat tight. In a moment, Ma, he said, his grip tightening just slightly. There's someone you need to meet. But before he could steer me away, a woman glided into our path. She was older, wearing a red dress that screamed for attention, diamonds dripping from her neck. Dante, darling, she cooed, her voice like fake sugar. I wondered if you'd show. And you must be the new project. She aimed her smile at me. It didn't reach her cold, blue eyes. This is Amelia Harrington, Dante said, his voice polite, but laced with steel. Amelia, this is Sienna Blake, my lead design consultant. Amelia's painted-on eyebrow rose. Consultant, is that what we're calling it? How quaint. She leaned in, as if sharing a secret. I heard he picked you up from the gutter, wasn't it? A single mother, I hear. You must be so grateful. Dante always did have a soft spot for strays. The words hit me like a physical slap. The humiliation was so intense, so immediate. I couldn't breathe. My face burned. I was back in that bakery, holding my $43, the whole world watching me fail. I just froze. I wanted to run, to scream, to disappear. Dante's hand on my back became a vice. He didn't look at me. He looked at Amelia. His face was perfectly calm, but his eyes were lethal. Amelia, he said, his voice dangerously soft. The whispers around us stopped. People were listening. I'm glad you brought up Sienna's status. He turned, not just to her, but to the small circle of sharks that had formed. Mrs. Blake is, as I said, my lead consultant. She is also the only person in this room I would trust with my life. He looked back at Amelia, a cold, dismissive smile playing on his lips. You see, unlike so many in this city, Sienna's loyalty isn't for sale. It can't be bought. He let that hang in the air. It has to be earned. You'd know all about things that are bought. Wouldn't you, Amelia? The woman's face went white, then a splotchy, ugly red. Her husband, I'd heard, had bought his way out of an indictment just last year. Dante had just reminded everyone. Dante didn't wait for a reply. We're leaving, he said to me. He kept his hand on my back and steered me through the crowd, which parted for him like he was a king. We were in the back of the SUV, the partition gliding up before the first sob escaped. It wasn't a loud cry. It was a silent, wretched weeping. The shame, the anger, the bone-deep mortification. She was right, I whispered, the tears streaming down my hot face. I'm a stray. I don't belong here. I'm just the girl with the declined card. Dante was silent. The car moved smoothly through the Chicago night. Then, his hand, large and warm, covered mine. He didn't pat it. He just held it. His thumb stroked the back of my hand, a slow, steady, grounding rhythm. Look at me, he commanded. I shook my head, unable to let him see me this broken. He used his other hand to cup my chin, forcing me to turn. His face was close in the darkness of the car. I have been in rooms like that my entire life, he said, his voice a low, rough growl. They are filled with liars, cowards, and ghosts. They feed on each other. You walked into that room tonight with nothing but your own nerve. He leaned in, his gaze intense. They're not better than you. Sienna, they're terrified of you, because you're real. He lifted my hand, the one he was holding, and pressed his lips to the inside of my wrist. A jolt of pure, unadulterated electricity shot up my arm. His lips were warm, his touch firm. I have never, he whispered against my skin. in my entire life, met anyone stronger than you." My tears stopped. My breath hitched. We got back to the condo. The sitter was gone. The apartment was dark and quiet. Ava was asleep. I stood by the window, staring at the lights, my heart still hammering from his words, his touch. I was still wearing the dress, but I felt different. "Thank you," I said to his reflection in the glass, for what you said to her and to me. He came to stand behind me, not touching, but so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I meant every word. The silence stretched, filled with the night's tension, the humiliation at the gala, his fierce defense, the intimate, shocking kiss on my wrist. It all swirled in the air between us. I turned to face him. My body was thrumming with a strange, new energy. That world, your world, it's all pain, isn't it? It's all fighting. "It was," he said, his eyes dark, fixed on my mouth, "until I found you." I didn't know who moved first. Maybe I swayed toward him. Maybe he reached for me. But suddenly my hands were on his chest, flat against the crisp white shirt of his tux. I could feel his heart, a strong, steady drumbeat beneath my palm. He looked down at me, his eyes asking the question his lips wouldn't. And I gave him the answer. I nodded. A small, terrified, desperate nod. It was all the permission he needed. His hands went to my waist, slow, deliberate. His touch was electric, burning through the silk. He didn't pull me, he just held me. He was giving me a chance to run. "Sienna," he whispered, his voice rough. "Tell me to stop." "Don't," I breathed. He kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, rainy collision. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was a conquest. His mouth explored mine, tenderly at first, and then with a growing, demanding hunger. It was a kiss that was meant to erase every bad memory, every cruel word, every moment of shame I had ever felt. His hands slid from my waist up my back, pulling me flush against him. I gasped into his mouth, my fingers curling, gripping the lapels of his jacket. He kissed my jaw, my neck, the sensitive place just below my ear, leaving a trail of fire. "Dante," I whispered, my knees weak. He lifted me, effortlessly. He just scooped me into his arms, and I wrapped my legs around his waist, my arms around his neck. He carried me into the bedroom, his mouth never leaving mine. He laid me on the bed, following me down, his body covering mine. He was heavy, solid, a mountain of heat and power. He unzipped the dress, his fingers brushing my spine, and I shivered. He pushed the silk off my shoulders, his eyes never leaving mine. He was watching me, gauging my reaction. I wasn't scared, not of him, not anymore. He touched my skin like he was touching fire, with a reverence that made my heart ache. His kisses were slow, his touches hesitant at first, then more confident as I arched into his hand. It was an exploration, a rediscovery. He was learning every line of my body, and I was learning the feel of his. It was breathless and overwhelming, a slow, deliberate claiming that felt more permanent than any contract. He was a man of control, and he was giving all of it to me. Every touch was a question, every kiss a promise. And when I finally surrendered, it wasn't a defeat, it was a homecoming. We lay in the dark afterward, tangled in the high thread count sheets. The adrenaline of the night was gone, replaced by a deep, boneless quiet. "I almost gave her up," I whispered into the darkness. He tensed beside me. "What?" "Ava." The confession felt heavy, ripped from a place I kept locked away. When she was born, I was so scared, so alone. Her father was gone. I had nothing. I held her, and I told the nurse I couldn't do it, that she deserved better. I signed the first paper to give her up. I was crying, softly, ashamed. I sat in that hallway for an hour, and then I heard her cry, down the hall. It was this tiny, furious sound, and I just ran. I ran back to the nursery. I ripped the paper out of the nurse's hand. I've never told anyone that. Dante didn't say, "It's okay." He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just rolled toward me, pulling me against his chest. He held me. He just held me, his hand stroking my hair, his body a solid, warm wall. He waited until my breathing evened out. "My sister," he said, his voice a low, dead thing in the dark. Her name was Alara. I went still. "She was 12, he said, staring at the ceiling. "I was 16. It was a family matter, a message from a rival. They were trying to force my father's hand." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. It was my job to walk her home from school, every day. That day, I was late, 10 minutes. I was with a girl, trying to be a man. Just 10 minutes. He swallowed. When I got to the corner, she was gone. Her book bag was on the sidewalk. He stopped, and the silence was so heavy, so full of pain. I could barely breathe. "We never found her," he whispered. Not even a body, nothing. She was just gone, because I was 10 minutes late." Now I understood. The protection, the surveillance, the fury at the mugger, the need to control every single variable. He wasn't just protecting me. He was trying to save his sister. "Dante," I sobbed, holding on to him. "Oh, Dante, I'm so sorry." "It's why I left," he said, his voice rough. "The family, the business. I built my own. I built it on an idea that nothing would ever be unprotected again." I held him, this powerful, broken man. I finally understood him. "So," I whispered, kissing his shoulder, "that day, at the bakery, you were my guardian angel." I tried to lighten the mood, just a fraction. It was fate. You were there just when I needed you. He didn't respond. He went very, very still in my arms. "Dante?" He pulled back, just enough to look at me in the dim light from the window. His face was a mask of guilt. "No," he said, his voice barely audible. What do you mean, no?" "It wasn't fate, Sienna," he said, his voice heavy. I knew you'd be there." The blood in my veins turned to ice, the warmth from our bodies, the intimacy. It all evaporated. "What are you talking about?" "I'd seen you before," he confessed, and I could see the shame in his eyes. "At the diner, and at your other job, the cleaning job." I pulled the sheet up to my chest, a cold, sick dread creeping into my stomach. "The finance firm, at Romano Systems." "No," he said quickly. "A different building. One of my associates owns it. I was there. I saw you stood up to one of the managers. He was screaming at another cleaner, and you stepped in. You told him to back off. You were fearless." I remembered that. A few months ago, I'd almost been fired. You've been watching me," I whispered, "for months." I had my team look into you," he admitted, his voice pained. "I learned everything. The struggles, the ex, the design school, Ava." The room was spinning. The man who had just shared his deepest wound was also my stalker. "So the bakery," I said, my voice shaking as the pieces clicked into place. The declined card, his perfect, heroic entrance. That wasn't a coincidence. "I knew you were saving for the cake," he said, his voice cracking. I may have had someone make sure your card wouldn't work." I felt like he had just punched me in the stomach. The most humiliating moment of my life. He had engineered it. "So you could..." "What? So you could save me? So you could be the hero?" I scrambled away from him, off the bed, pulling the sheet with me. I felt naked, violated. "No," he said, sitting up. "So I could meet you, so I could have a reason. I didn't know how else." "So none of this," I gestured between us, to the room, to my life. "None of this was a coincidence?" He looked at me, his face a mask of regret. "No," he said, his voice broken. The bakery wasn't, but everything after that, everything that just happened in this bed, that was real. Sienna, I swear to you, that was... I just stared at him. The man who had built my cage and then handed me the key, all while pretending he'd found me by accident. The trust, so new and fragile, didn't just crack, it shattered. The sheet felt like a shroud. I clutched it to my chest, the cold, empty space beside me in the bed, a screaming accusation. He had orchestrated my deepest humiliation. He had played God with my life, with my shame, all to meet me. You made me a victim, I whispered, the words tasting like poison. I scrambled off the bed, pulling the high thread count sheet with me, a pathetic shield against his calculated betrayal. You made me weak, so you could be strong. Dante sat up, his face a mask of self-loathing. He didn't try to cover himself. He let me see him, exposed. Sienna, it wasn't like that. What was it like, Dante? I rounded on him, my voice shaking with a rage that was colder and deeper than any I had ever known. Was it a game? Were you bored? Let's see the poor girl dance for her daughter's cake? No. He stood, his voice a low growl of frustration. I saw you, months ago, at the building on Wacker. My cleaning job, I spat. Yes, you were standing up to a man, shouting at him, defending another cleaner. I remember he was a pig. I almost lost my job. You did lose your job, he said quietly. I had him fire you the next day. I felt the blood drain from my face. You... what? And then I had him rehire you at double the pay and move him to a different site. He was an associate, one of my father's. He was skimming from the building, mistreating the staff. I was there to address it, and I saw you. You did it first. You were magnificent. You were fire. And you had no idea who you were yelling at. So you've been managing my life for months? The manipulation was so deep, so spiderwebbed, I couldn't see the edges. I wanted to know who you were, he admitted, his voice ragged. I had my team look into you. I learned everything. The struggles, the ex, the design school, Ava, and I couldn't stay away. I was obsessed. The bakery was clumsy. It was the only way I knew how to enter your world, to have a reason. So the mugging, I said, my voice dead, that was you, too? A test to see if I was worth saving? His face went white. No, God, no. That was them. That was my uncle's crew. They saw me watching you. My interest. My obsession. It put a target on your back. The bakery was my arrogance. The mugging was my mistake. That's when I knew I hadn't just found you. I had endangered you. I felt sick. I backed away, shaking my head, the sheet dragging on the floor. I can't look at you. Everything, every kind word, every moment. It was all a lie, a calculation. No, he said, stepping toward me. Sienna? Get out, I whispered. What? Get out. I pointed to the bedroom door, my hand trembling violently. Get out of this room. Don't touch me. He stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. The pain in his eyes was as deep as my own, but he did it. He walked out of the bedroom, taking his guilt with him, and I was left alone in the cold, vast, beautiful prison he had built for me. The condo became a tomb. We lived like ghosts, two satellites in a cold, silent orbit. He slept on the sofa in the living room. I slept in the king-sized bed, alone. I didn't stop working on the designs. I had signed a contract, and I would honor it. But the joy was gone. It was just a job, a way to pay my invisible debt. He would leave coffee for me in the kitchen in the morning. I would leave his dinner in the oven at night. We barely spoke. We communicated through polite, sterile notes on the marble island. Ava needs new crayons. The blueprints for the third floor are here. The silence was a tangible thing, thick and suffocating. Ava felt it. Is Dante mad at us, Mommy? She asked, her small voice echoing in the cavernous living room. "No, sweetie," I lied, pulling her close. He's very busy with work." She looked at me with those wide, knowing eyes. "You're mad at him." I didn't have an answer for that. Then the knock came. It wasn't Dante's heavy, solid thud. It was a sharp, official rap. My heart jumped into my throat. I looked through the peephole. 2 men in suits, not Dante's men. They were normal. "Who is it?" I called through the door. "Chicago PD," a voice replied. "We're looking for a Miss Sienna Blake. We have a few questions for you." I opened the door, my stomach twisting. Dante came out of the study, his face a mask of controlled neutrality. "I'm Sienna Blake," when I said. The taller detective looked past me, at Dante, at the opulent penthouse, his eyes taking in the scene with a practiced, cynical gaze. "Ma'am, do you know a Mr. Arthur Henderson?" My old landlord," I stammered. "Yes, why?" "Mr. Henderson was attacked last night in the garage of his apartment building," the detective said, his eyes flat. "He's in the ICU at Northwestern. Severe head trauma, multiple fractures. The doctors aren't sure he's going to make it." I felt faint. "Oh my God, that's horrible." "You were in the process of being evicted, weren't you, Miss Blake? We saw the file, lawsuit, allegations of property damage, drug use." That was all lies," I protested. I didn't. "Where were you last night, Miss Blake, between, say, 10 p.m. and midnight?" I froze. My alibi was my captor, my lover, my manipulator. I was here," I said, my voice small. "All night." "Can anyone verify that?" the detective asked, his pen poised over his notebook. I looked at Dante. He stepped forward, a solid, intimidating presence in his perfect suit. "She was with me," Dante said. His voice was calm, authoritative. "All night." The detectives looked at each other. They knew exactly who he was. The reclusive billionaire, the man with the rumored mob ties. And I was the former tenant, now living in his penthouse, with a motive to hurt the man who was evicting me. It looked bad. It looked exactly like what Amelia Harrington had called me. "I see," the detective said, his politeness barely veiling his suspicion. "Well, we'll be in touch if we have any more questions. Mr. Romano, Miss Blake." They left. I slammed the door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely find the lock. "They think I did it," I whispered, rounding on him. Or that you did it for me." "It's handled," he said, his voice tight. He was already on his phone, dialing a number. "Handled?" I shrieked, my voice cracking. "Like the eviction was handled? Like the bakery was handled? My God, Dante, did you do this?" He looked up from his phone, his eyes filled with a cold fury I hadn't seen before. "No, I did not." "But they did, didn't they?" I whispered, the cold reality hitting me. Your uncle, your family. This is them again. They're framing me." He didn't answer, just spoke into the phone. "Get down to Northwestern, Henderson's room. I want 2 men on his door. No one gets in. No one, and find out who the police spoke to. I want it contained." He hung up and looked at me. "You are not to leave this apartment, is that clear?" He was gone. I was alone again. I was beginning to doubt everything. Was he protecting me? Or was I bait? Was he using me to draw his enemies out, one by one, so he could eliminate them? Was I the cheese in his very expensive, very dangerous trap? I called Lila, my hands shaking. I needed a voice from the outside world. "Sienna, oh my God, I've been so worried. Where are you?" I'm safe. Lee, I'm staying somewhere." I couldn't tell her the truth. "Listen, can you do me a favor? My old landlord, Mr. Henderson, he's at Northwestern. He was attacked. Can you find out anything? The police were here." "The police? Sienna, what the hell is going on?" "Please, Lee, just see what you can find out." She called back an hour later. "It's weird, Sienna," she said, her voice hushed. "I have a cousin who's a nurse there. She said he's stable, but the police, they were all over the floor, and then, suddenly, they just left. The case. It's like it vanished. My cousin said 2 very large, very scary men in suits are sitting outside his room now, and no one is allowed in. Dante's lawyer, his men, he'd wiped it all away. He'd made the police, the attack, just disappear. My doubt festered. I was trapped. The breaking point came 3 days later. Ava had been going to a new school, a small, exclusive private school in Lincoln Park, one Dante had arranged. He'd enrolled her under a different last name, a security precaution. He'd said, I hated it, but I was too scared to fight him on it. I was in the middle of a design schematic when my phone rang. It was the school, the headmistress. Her voice was frantic. Miss Blake. Miss Vance, she stammered, using the fake name. There was an incident. You need to come. Now. My blood turned to ice. What incident? Is Ava okay? She's fine. She's safe. In my office. But a man, he tried to sign her out. What? He came to the front desk. He knew her name. Her real name. Miss Blake. He said he was a family friend, here to pick her up. We have protocols. We called you. He must have heard. He fled. I was already in my shoes, grabbing my keys. I'm on my way. I ran out of the apartment, ignoring the elevator, and slammed the button for the stairs. I was halfway down the first flight when the elevator door opened, and Dante stepped out. Sienna, where are you going? He commanded. The school, I screamed, not stopping. Someone tried to take her. Dante, they knew her name. His face went gray. He didn't run. He moved. He was at my side in an instant, his hand on my arm, pulling me back to the elevator. We'll be faster this way. The ride down was the longest, most agonizing silence of my life. His driver was waiting. We were at the school in 6 minutes. Ava was in the headmistress's office, coloring, oblivious. She ran to me, and I crushed her in my arms, burying my face in her hair, my body shaking. Dante, I heard him say, his voice deadly calm, is already in with security. He's reviewing the footage. I held Ava for a full minute, just breathing her in. Then I left her with the headmistress and walked to the security office. Dante was standing in front of a monitor, his back to me. It was rigid. Let me see him, I said. Sienna, he started. Show me, now. He nodded to the security guard. The guard hit play. A man in a cheap-looking tracksuit, his face grainy but clear. He was leaning on the counter, smiling at the receptionist. My stomach turned over. He looked familiar. Who is he? I demanded. Dante was silent. Dante, who is he? Dante slowly turned to face me. His face was ravaged. It was the face of a man who had just seen his worst nightmare come true. His name is Marco Jenna, he said, his voice hollow. He was part of my father's crew. The words hung in the air. Your father's crew. Sienna. The Mafia, I said, the word a raw, ugly thing. The outfit, you lied to me. You told me it was just rumors. It's complicated. Complicated? I was shouting now, right there in the school's security office. The guard flinched. He tried to take my daughter, a mobster, your family. You brought this. I couldn't breathe. I was hysterical. Dante grabbed my arm. Not here. He half dragged me out of the office, grabbed Ava, and pulled us back to the car. The ride back to the condo was a blur of my own sobs. As soon as the apartment door shut, I put Ava in her room with the television on and rounded on him. Tell me, I snarled, my voice a low, shaking hiss of fury. You tell me everything, no more lies, no more half-truths. You tell me what you are, or I swear to God, Dante, I will take my daughter, and I will walk out that door, and I don't care what happens. I would rather take my chances on the street than be in this cage with you. He looked at me. The fight was gone. He looked broken, defeated. Elara, he said. Your sister, I know, she was kidnapped. She was kidnapped by a rival faction within my father's organization, he said, his voice flat. My uncle, my father's brother, Paolo, he wanted to force my father out, to take control. He used his niece. He made an example of her. I felt sick. After that, after she was gone, I couldn't be a part of it. The blood, the life. But you don't just leave the outfit. It's not a job. It's blood. He walked to the window, staring out at the city. So I distanced, he said. I built Romano Systems. I built it as a fortress, a clean, legitimate world. I poured every dollar I inherited, every dollar I made, into making it impenetrable. I thought if I was powerful enough, clean enough, they couldn't touch me. I thought I had escaped. He turned back to me, his face etched with pain. But they never let go. The old guard, my uncle. They see me as a traitor or as an asset to be reclaimed. They see my company, my wealth, as theirs, as family money. And they've been trying to get leverage on me for years. Marco Jenna, I whispered. He works for Paolo. He's my uncle's top enforcer. He's been the one. He sent the mugger. He put your landlord in the hospital. He's trying to prove a point, that I can't protect what's mine, that I'm still just that 16-year-old boy who was 10 minutes late. So this will never end, I said, the words a hollow finality. I sank onto one of the cold designer sofas. I will end it, he said, his voice soft. How? I looked up at him. How, Dante, more lawyers, more men outside doors? He walked over to me. He knelt. He knelt on the marble floor in his $1,000 suit, and he took my hands. They were ice cold. I will do what I have to do, he said, his eyes burning into mine. And I will protect you and Ava. Whether you are with me or not, whether you ever speak to me again, you will be safe. I swear it on my sister's memory. I saw the tears in his eyes. He wasn't the billionaire. He wasn't the mob scion. He was just the boy who had lost his sister. He stood up. I have to handle this. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. He left. I locked the deadbolt, my hands numb. The condo was silent. Too silent. I was alone. Utterly and completely alone. I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline, the fear, the betrayal. It was all churning inside me. I went into Ava's room. She was asleep, her stuffed bear from Paris clutched in her arms. I sat on the floor by her bed and just watched her. I pulled out my phone. I scrolled back to before Dante, before the bakery, before the fear. I found an old video. Ava, 3 years old, her face smeared with chocolate, singing her ABCs. She was so small. My world had been so small. It was hard. It was a grind, but it was ours. It was simple. I cried for the life I'd lost. I cried for the woman I had been who was so worried about a $50 cake. I realized how isolated I was. I had no one. Lila didn't know where I was. I had no family. I had him. Only him. A man who was part shadow, part lie. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours. The city lights outside the window began to soften, the pitch-black sky turning a deep, bruised purple. Then I heard it. A sound at the front door. Not a knock, a thud, a heavy, slumping sound, like a body. My heart stopped. Marco Jenna, my uncle. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a glass design award from Dante's study. I crept to the door. I looked through the peephole. I saw nothing, just the floor of the hallway. Then a groan. I fumbled with the lock, my heart hammering. I pulled the heavy door open. Dante. He was slumped against the doorframe, a broken, bloody heap. His suit was ripped. His white shirt was red. He was a mess. His face was a mask of blood and fresh bruises. His lip was split, his left eye already swelling shut. He had been in a fight, a brutal, vicious fight. He looked up at me, his one good eye finding mine. He tried to speak. Sienna. And then he just collapsed. He fell forward into my arms, into the apartment. "Dante!" I screamed, dropping the award. I caught him, his dead weight almost taking me down. I half dragged, half carried him inside, slamming the door shut with my foot. "Oh my God!" I was sobbing. "Oh my God! Dante, what did you do?" He was groaning, semi-conscious. I dragged him to the bathroom, the cold white marble floor smearing with his blood. I laid him against the wall. I grabbed towels, ran them under warm water. I knelt in front of him, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the cloth. "Dante, look at me," I commanded, my voice breaking. I started to clean his face. The blood was everywhere. I wiped away a smear from his cheekbone, revealing a deep, raw cut. You idiot," I whispered, the tears streaming down my face. You stupid, brave idiot." He groaned, his good eye fluttering open. He was trying to focus on me. He saw my tears. He lifted a hand, his knuckles bloody and raw, and tried to touch my face. "Sana," he rascalped. "He's gone. Paolo es done." He meant he'd ended it. He'd gone to war for me. My anger, my fear, my weeks of betrayal. It didn't just crack. It dissolved. It washed away in a hot tidal wave of something that felt terrifyingly like love. I held his face in my hands, my thumbs wiping the blood from his bruised cheekbones. I was sobbing, my tears dripping onto his ruined face. I pressed my forehead against his. "Don't," I choked out. Don't you dare leave us. Do you hear me? Don't leave us." His good eye held mine. He saw everything. He used his last ounce of strength to pull me to him, his bloody hand tangled in my hair, his other arm locked around my waist like a steel band. And he kissed me. It wasn't a kiss. It was an explosion. It was all the fear, all the anger, all the lies, and all the broken promises colliding. It tasted like blood and tears and desperation. It was raw. It was a claiming. It was a promise that he was mine, that I was his, and that we would not be broken. I kissed him back, my hands framing his beaten face, my mouth meeting his desperation with my own. We weren't in a penthouse. We weren't a boss and his consultant. We weren't a mob scion and his project. We were just two survivors, clinging to each other on the floor, and in that moment, in that raw, bloody, and terrifying kiss, we were finally telling the truth. The kiss on the bathroom floor was a fracture. It was the moment the world I thought I knew broke apart, and the one I was terrified of became my only reality. I patched him up in a fog. My hands, which had been trembling, were now clinically steady. I was no longer the victim. I was the caregiver, the accomplice, the partner. I got him to the sofa, his arm slung over my shoulder, his entire weight a solid, painful testament to the violence he had endured for me. He collapsed onto the cushions, hissing as his ribs protested. I cleaned the last of the blood from the cut on his cheekbone. "Paolo," he rasped, his eyes closed. "My uncle, he's gone." "Gone? As in arrested?" I whispered, my hand freezing. Dante's one good eye opened, pinning me. It was the eye of a man who had seen things I could only imagine. Gone, as in, he will never bother you again. He will never bother anyone again. He had done it. He hadn't just fought. He had finished it. He had cut the head off the snake. And I didn't feel horror. I didn't feel disgust. I felt a profound, terrifying, an absolute wave of relief. He had gone to war for my daughter. He had taken the violence of his world and turned it into a shield for mine. I spent the next 3 days in a strange, suspended reality. Dante healed with an unnatural speed. The bruises faded from purple to a sick, yellowish green. He never left the condo. He sat in the study, his laptop open, the phone fused to his ear, his voice a low, commanding rumble. He was a king reclaiming his throne, but he was doing it from a gilded cage. He was dismantling his uncle's faction, cutting off their money, bleeding them dry, all with a few quiet phone calls. I would bring him coffee, and he would take it, his knuckles brushing mine, his good eye tracking me with a new, raw intensity, the betrayal, the lies of the bakery. They hadn't vanished, but they had been eclipsed. They were the actions of a man desperate to get in. What he had just done were the actions of a man desperate not to be thrown out. I was in the kitchen, pretending to read one of Ava's books, when I overheard the phone call that changed everything. "Julian," Dante said, his voice low, "the board meeting is set for Friday. I'm stepping down." My head snapped up. "It's not a discussion," Dante continued, cutting off the voice on the other end. "You're taking over as CEO, effective immediately. I'm disappearing. Liquidate my personal holdings. Move them to the offshore accounts we discussed. The Aegis protocol is active. I am officially a ghost." He was leaving, after all of it. The fight, the blood, the raw confession on the bathroom floor. His solution was to run. He ended the call and saw me standing in the doorway, his face, bruised and severe, softened. "Sienna," he said. "You're leaving," I stated. It wasn't a question. "It's the only way," he said, standing slowly, his ribs still aching. "I've cut them off. I've broken them. But the blood is in the water. My rivals, the ones who aren't family, they know I'm vulnerable. They know about you. As long as I am Dante Romano, CEO of a billion-dollar company, I am a target. And as long as I am a target, you are the bullseye. So you just, what? You vanish? You run away?" "I protect what's mine," he said, his voice rough. I'm taking you somewhere, a place they will never find. New names, new lives. We'll be safe." "Safe," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "Safe and gone. You're asking me to just leave my life?" "I'm trying to give you a life," he countered, his voice rising in frustration. "One where you don't have to look over your shoulder. One where your daughter can go to school without a mobster trying to snatch her." And what kind of life is it if you're not in it? I hadn't meant to say it. The words just fell out. He stared at me, his one good eye wide with a vulnerability that cracked my heart open. "What? You're not leaving with us, are you?" I whispered, the cold dread returning. You're sending us away. You're disappearing from us." He looked away, his jaw working. He couldn't lie. Not about this. "They're looking for me. Sienna, not for you. If I'm gone, if I'm truly gone, the hunt stops. You'll just be a woman I once knew. You'll be safe." "You're sacrificing yourself," I said, my voice flat. "I'm ending the threat," he replied. He walked past me, his hand brushing my arm. I have to make the final arrangements. I'll be back tonight. Don't leave, please." He left. The solid thud of the door locking echoed in the silent apartment. I was alone. He was going to save me by abandoning me. It was the Romano way. Protection was removal, just like his sister. I was numb. I drifted into the study, his scent of coffee and antiseptic still lingering in the air. His briefcase was on the desk, open. He'd never left it open before. Inside, on top of a stack of files, was a single, thick, black folder. My name was on it, Sienna Blake. My fingers trembled as I lifted it. I sat in his chair. I opened it. The first document was a bank transfer. My name, my social security number, which he had no business knowing. The amount, I couldn't comprehend it. It was $10 million, transferred to a trust in my name. The next was a deed, a house. In Oregon, a small coastal town, pictures were attached. It was beautiful. A simple, modern but warm house, nestled in the trees, overlooking the ocean, a place to hide, a place to grow. Then, the legal documents. My stomach turned to ice. They were guardianship papers, a petition. In the event of my death or incapacitation, full guardianship of Eva Marie Blake would be transferred to a man named Julian Kane, his COO, and a woman named Elena Alviani, the doctor. He was ensuring Ava would be cared for by his people, even if I felt sick. At the bottom, there was a single handwritten envelope, just Sienna. I opened it. His handwriting was sharp, black, and angular. Sienna, it read. If you're reading this, I am gone. It was the only way. I orchestrated the bakery. I will live with that shame forever. But it was the only way I knew how to get to you. Every moment since then, every breath, has been real. I thought I was saving you, but you saved me. You showed me what a home was. You and Ava, you were my peace. He will never hurt you again. None of them will. You are safe. She is safe. That is all that matters. D. The paper was damp. I hadn't even realized I was crying. I wasn't crying from gratitude. I was crying from rage. I was enraged. And I was touched. So deeply, so profoundly touched that it felt like another wound. He would give up everything. His name, his company, his life, just to ensure we were safe. And he thought he could do it without me. I stormed out of the study. Ava was napping. I grabbed the folder, I grabbed the letter, and I left the condo. I didn't care that I wasn't supposed to leave. I went down to the lobby. Mr. Romano, I said to the concierge, my voice shaking. He has a penthouse, the top floor. I need to get up there. The concierge, who usually looked through me, saw the fire in my eyes and the black folder in my hand. He just nodded and buzzed me up. The elevator opened into his real apartment. It was dark. Wood, leather, books, a fireplace. It was a home, not a safe house. This was him. He was standing by a window, his back to me, a glass of something dark in his hand. Sienna, he said, not turning, you shouldn't be here. You coward. I breathed. He turned, his bruised face a mask of confusion. What? I marched up to him. I threw the letter at his chest. It fluttered to the floor. This, I shouted, my voice echoing in the cavernous room. This isn't love. This is a transaction. This is you paying me off. I'm keeping you safe, he yelled back, his own control finally cracking. By leaving, I was sobbing now, hitting his chest with my fists. He didn't even flinch. You don't get to do that. You don't get to save me and then leave me. You don't get to walk away and call it love. That is not how this works. It's the only way, he roared, grabbing my wrists. His grip was steel. My world, it's poison, Sienna. It will kill you. It will take her, just like it took Alara. I am not Alara, I screamed, struggling against him. I am not your past. I am not some ghost you have to atone for. I am here. I am right here, and I am not letting you go. You don't have a choice, he said, his voice breaking. I am drowning you. Can't you see that? I am a monster, Sienna. I ended a man. I killed my own uncle. I know, I cried, and I don't care. I was glad. He tried to take my daughter. He hurt you. I was glad you did it. He froze. He just stared at me. He saw the truth in my eyes, that I wasn't just the victim, that I was like him, that I understood his darkness. His grip on my wrists loosened. His hands slid up my arms, to my shoulders, to my face. His thumbs wiped away my tears. Sienna, he whispered, his voice ravaged with a grief so deep it stole my breath. I can't lose you, too. Then don't, I breathed, my hands coming up to cover his. Don't leave me, please, Dante. Don't leave us. The space between us was electric. It was filled with grief, with pain, with the raw, unspoken terror of what we had become, the chemistry. It was not just unstoppable. It was a force of nature. It was all the pain, all the fear, all the desperate, clawing longing not to be alone anymore. He crashed his mouth down on mine. It was a kiss of utter desperation. It wasn't about passion. It was about possession. It was a promise. It was a plea. His arms wrapped around me like steel bands, lifting me off my feet, crushing me against him as if he could merge our two bodies, our two broken souls, into one. I clung to him, my fingers tangled in his hair, my mouth answering his raw, desperate hunger with my own. We collapsed. We didn't make it to a bed. We sank to the thick, plush rug in front of the cold fireplace. A tangle of limbs and frantic, whispered promises. Don't go. I'm here. Please. We didn't make love. We clung to each other. We held on, as if the world was ending. It was a raw, painful, desperate affirmation that we were alive and we were together. And for now, that was the only thing that mattered. Afterward, we just lay there, my head on his chest, his arm locked around me. His heartbeat was a slow, steady drum beneath my ear. The fight was over. So what now? I whispered into the silence. He stroked my hair. Now, we live together, but we have to be smart. We have to be invisible. Before he could say more, my phone, which I'd left on his desk, buzzed. I sat up, pulling my clothes back on. I glanced at the screen. It was a text from Cindy, the other waitress from Stan's. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Hey, Sienna, the text read. Long time no see. Heard you left Stan's. Good for you. Just checking in. Are you okay? Where are you staying these days? A flicker of normalcy. A friend. After the raw emotion of the last hour, I was desperate for it. She was my friend, I murmured, more to myself than to Dante. Be careful, he said, sitting up, his face hardening again. It's Cindy, I said. She's nice. I texted back. My fingers were still shaking. Hey, I'm okay. Staying at a condo on the Gold Coast for a while. It's complicated. Hope you're okay. Dante was watching me. His eyes narrowed. Gold Coast. You shouldn't have done that. Dante, it's fine. She's just a waitress. The reply came almost instantly. Wow, fancy, glad you're doing well, TTYL. A cold prickle. It was too fast, too breezy. We're leaving, Dante said, standing up. He was all business again. Now, go get Ava, pack a bag, one bag. We're leaving the city. Tonight. What, Dante? It was just a text. It was a probe, he snapped. A part-time coworker? After all this time, now? No, we're compromised. Go, now. I'll meet you at the condo in 10 minutes. We take my car, we go. I ran back to the safe house, my heart hammering. He was paranoid. He had to be. I burst into the condo. Ava, baby, wake up. We're going on a trip. A surprise. I was throwing her clothes into her school backpack. My hands were shaking. I was being ridiculous. And then I heard it. It wasn't the chime of the elevator. It was a scrape from the kitchen, the service door, the one I had forgotten existed. I froze. Ava was rubbing her eyes. Mommy? I heard a click, the service door lock. Breaking. I didn't scream. I didn't think. I moved. I snatched Ava from the bed. I ran into the master bedroom, into the massive, dark, walk-in closet. Mommy, Ava whimpered. What's... Shh, I hissed. We're playing a game, the quiet game, the most important quiet game ever. Baby, you can't make a sound. Not a sound, do you understand? She nodded, her eyes wide with terror. I pulled the closet door shut. I locked it. I pushed us back, behind Dante's row of identical black suits. I pulled out my phone. I dialed Dante. He answered on the first ring. "I'm on my way up." "Dante," I whispered, my voice trembling so hard I could barely speak. They're in the apartment." I didn't wait for a reply. I just left the line open. I muffled the phone against my chest. I heard them, men, 2, maybe 3. Their footsteps were heavy on the marble floor. They weren't trying to be quiet. "She's gotta be here," a rough voice growled. Becky said, "Gold Coast. This is the spot. Find the girl. The kid." Becky, Cindy, my friend, she'd been their spy all along. "Tear the place apart," another voice said. I heard a crash, glass shattering, furniture being overturned. They were destroying the place. They were ransacking it. Ava was trembling in my arms. I put my hand over her mouth, gently. I could feel her silent tears, hot on my fingers. The bedroom door slammed open. "Check the bathroom. Check the closet." My heart stopped. I was going to die. Here, in a closet full of a dead man's suits. The doorknob jiggled. He yanked it. The lock held. "It's locked," the man growled. "Then break it down, you idiot." I squeezed Ava, pressing her face into my chest. "I love you," I whispered. "I love you so much." The man grunted, putting his shoulder to the door. The wood groaned. And then, chime? The sound of the main elevator. The men in the bedroom went silent. "Who the hell is that?" "Go check," the man outside the closet hissed. We heard footsteps. Then, a shout from the living room. "Hey, what the—" It was cut off. A sound, a wet, sickening thud, a grunt, the sound of a body hitting the marble floor, hard. The man outside the closet swore. What was that, Vinny?" He drew his gun. I could hear the click. He started to move, out of the bedroom. And then, he just stopped. I heard a gasp, a choked, gurgling sound. Then another thud. Silence. A complete, deafening, terrible silence. Ava was shaking so hard I could barely hold her. I was paralyzed. A full minute passed. Then, a tap on the closet door. Soft, rhythmic. Tap, 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 tap. A code I didn't know. "Sienna," Dante's voice. It was low. It was dead. A voice I had never heard. I fumbled with the lock. My hands. I finally got it. I pulled the door open. He was standing there. His face was blank. The bruised mask was back, but colder. Empty. He was breathing hard. He was untouched. Behind him, 2 men. 2 massive men in dark suits, their faces like stone. Men I had never, ever seen before. They were not his security. They were not his lawyers. They were soldiers. I looked past him. The bedroom was a wreck. And the man who had been at our door. He was on the floor. He wasn't moving. I stepped out of the closet, my legs shaking. I looked into the living room. It was destroyed. And there were 2 more bodies. "Dante," I whispered. He didn't look at them. He looked at me. He looked at Ava. "You called them," I said, looking at the 2 soldiers. Your old contacts, the outfit." "I did what I had to do," he said, his voice a flat, dead thing. He had done it. He had chosen violence. He had brought the full, dark, terrifying weight of his family, the world he tried to escape, crashing down on our enemies. He had become the monster to keep the monsters away. And as I looked at him, standing there in the ruins of our safe house, surrounded by his family's darkness, I had never loved him more. The sirens, I could hear them, faint, getting closer. Dante nodded to his men. "Go, take the service elevator. It's done." They didn't speak. They just vanished. He walked over to me. He took Ava from my arms. He held her against his chest, his eyes closing. his face a mask of such profound pain and relief that I had to look away. He looked at me. "It's over, Sienna, for good." The police were efficient. They were also hostile. When they saw Dante, his bruised face, the state of the apartment, the bodies, they knew. They knew this wasn't a simple robbery. They arrested him. Just for questioning Mr. Romano, the lead detective said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "We just need to sort this out." I watched them put him in the car. He didn't look at me. He just went. I spent 6 hours at the station. His real lawyer was there, a shark named Marcus, who looked at me with open disdain. Ava was with him, in a quiet room, with a woman he'd brought, a child trauma specialist, he'd said. Finally, at 5 a.m, Marcus came out. "He's being released," he said, his voice clipped. "What? But the men?" "What men?" Marcus asked, his eyebrows raised. "Mr. Romano was attacked in his home. He defended his family. The intruders seem to have fled the scene. There is a distinct lack of evidence, and no one to press charges. They had cleaned it up. The bodies, the evidence, all of it vanished. The rumors, the whispers, they were all true. He wasn't just rumored to have mob ties. He was the mob, or he was, when he needed to be." He walked out of the double doors, his suit still perfect, his bruised face looking even more sinister in the harsh, fluorescent light. He looked exhausted. And then, the doors to the station burst open. Cameras, flashes, shouting. "Mr. Romano, is it true the outfit was involved in the altercation?" "Mr. Romano? Who is she? Is this the woman you've been hiding? Is the Romano family at war?" The flashes were blinding. Dante froze. He was exposed, vulnerable. The reclusive billionaire, caught in a mob war, a woman and a child at his side. He looked at me. His eyes said, "Run, take Ava, hide, save yourself." And I made my choice. I walked over to the woman holding Ava. I took my daughter's hand. Ava, half asleep, clung to me. I walked back. I walked right through the sea of cameras. I walked right up to Dante's side. He looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't hide. I didn't cry. I stood there. I took his arm. I held my daughter's hand, and I stared, cold and defiant, right back into the blinding lights of the cameras. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. My presence, my hand on his arm, said everything. I was with him, standing on the courthouse steps, with the flashes of cameras burning spots into my vision and my daughter's hand in one of mine. I had taken his arm with the other. It was a silent declaration, a choice. I had stepped out of the shadows of my old, small life and into the glaring, dangerous spotlight of his. The rumors, no longer whispers, exploded. Sienna Blake. The papers had called me. The mob prince's new woman. They got the prince part right. They had no idea about the woman. 6 months. That's how long it had been since that day. 6 months since Dante Romano, in a move that shook the Chicago business world, had stepped down as CEO of Romano Systems. He hadn't just stepped down, he had evaporated. He'd handed the reins to his COO, Julian, and vanished from the public eye, taking the target with him. He lived in the countryside now, a sprawling, quiet piece of land 2 hours north of the city, just over the Wisconsin border. It was a modern house, all glass and cedar, perched on a bluff overlooking a lake that was as cold and gray as his eyes had once been. He was no longer the billionaire. He was just Dante. I didn't live with him, not yet. I had my own apartment now, a new one, in a safe, quiet neighborhood, paid for with my own money, and I had my own business. Sienna Blake Interiors. It was small, just me, a laptop, and a mountain of fabric swatches, but it was mine. The seed money had come from the exorbitant salary he'd paid me as his consultant. I'd fought him on it, but he'd been immovable. "You earned it," he'd said. It was the only honest part of the contract. I insisted on paying him back, every cent in monthly installments. He'd just smiled, that rare, small smile, and accepted the first check. It was my independence. It was the only way I could sleep at night, knowing I was in his world, but not owned by it. Ava and I drove up every Friday. We'd leave the noise and the grime of the city behind, and the farther north we drove, the more the tension would bleed from my shoulders. Ava, now almost 7, would chatter in the back seat, no longer the quiet, wary little girl from the coughing fit in the night. She was bright, she was loud. She was, for the first time in her life, completely safe. Today was different, though it was a warm, bright Saturday in late spring. The grass was impossibly green. There was no wind. The lake was a sheet of perfect blue glass. We were having a picnic. I sat on a thick blanket, unpacking the sandwiches, while Dante and Ava were at the water's edge. He was teaching her how to skip stones. He was different here. The bespoke suits were gone, replaced by soft linen shirts and worn jeans. The ice in his eyes had melted, thawed by the simple, domestic peace of this new life. He was quiet. Yes, he would always be quiet. But the quiet was no longer cold. It was deep. I watched him kneel, his dark head bent close to Ava's bright blonde one. He showed her how to hold the flat stone, how to angle her wrist. He was so patient. My heart did a slow, painful clench. This man, who had dismantled his family's criminal enterprise with cold, surgical precision, was now debating the aerodynamic properties of a river rock with a 6-year-old. "Like this?" Ava's voice, high and clear, drifted back to me. "Just like that," he rumbled. "Now, low and fast." She threw it. The stone plopped, a foot from the shore. It didn't work. "It takes practice," he said, finding her another. "Try again." She tried again, and again. Finally, one of her throws managed 2 short, clumsy hops. She shrieked with a delight so pure it was like sunlight. "I did it! I did it!" "You did it," he confirmed. And the pride in his voice was so raw, so real, it made me look away. Ava abandoned the stones and launched herself at him. He caught her, his arms wrapping around her small body, lifting her up. She was giggling, her legs kicking. "Dad, look, a frog!" she yelled, pointing at a small green speck on a lily pad. The world stopped. My hand froze, halfway to the potato salad. Ava, oblivious, was still pointing. "It's a big one. Can we catch it?" "Dad." She had called him Dad. I looked at Dante, and he was standing in the shallow water, Ava perched on his hip. He was frozen, his face. It had gone completely blank. His eyes were fixed on Ava, but he wasn't seeing her. He was seeing, I don't know, everything he'd lost, everything he'd just found. "Dante," I said, my voice too quiet. He didn't move. Ava, sensing the shift, stopped wiggling. "What's wrong?" she asked, her small hand coming up to touch his bruised cheekbone, the old faded scar I'd patched up myself. Dante's throat worked. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He just held her. He buried his face in her hair, his massive shoulders shaking with a single, silent sob. "It's okay," Ava whispered, patting his back, her little voice full of a child's simple, profound empathy. "It's just a frog." He let out a sound, a rough, choked laugh that was half a sob. He tightened his grip on her. "It's okay," he whispered back, his voice thick. It's a perfect frog." He walked back to the blanket, carrying her. He sat, cross-legged, and never let her go. He just held her in his lap as we ate, his hand stroking her hair. He met my eyes over the top of her head, and in that one look, I saw it all. The boy who had lost his sister, the man who had found his daughter. He was healed. We were healed. That evening, the house was quiet. Ava, exhausted from her frog hunting and stone skipping, was fast asleep. I'd tucked her into the small bedroom that I had designed just for her, painted in a soft, warm yellow. Dante was in his study. I walked in, carrying 2 glasses of wine. The room smelled of old books and cedar and him. It was my favorite room in the house. He wasn't at his desk. He was standing in front of a small, framed picture I'd never noticed before. "What's that?" I asked, handing him a glass. He took it, his fingers brushing mine. A reminder. I stepped closer. It wasn't a picture. It was a menu, a laminated, slightly worn menu from La Petite Reine. My breath caught in my throat. Tucked into the corner of the frame, behind the glass, was a small, white receipt. I leaned in, my heart hammering. Date, October 24th. Item, 1 rosewater chiffon cake. Total, $49.50. Paid. I stared at it. The symbol of my deepest, most profound humiliation. The moment he had engineered, the moment he had confessed to. His face wrecked with guilt. He had framed it. "Why?" I whispered, my voice thick. Why would you keep this? To remind me of... To remind me. He cut me off, his voice low. He turned to face me. To remind me of what I almost lost, of what I was, before you. He touched the glass. I was a man. I was a ghost. Sienna, I was just... Anger and guilt and control. I saw you that day at the cleaning site, so full of fire. And then I saw you in that bakery, so broken. And you were still so strong. You were apologizing, but you weren't. Beaten. He looked at me. I was a coward. I manipulated you. It was the only way I knew. It was a transaction. "I know," I said. "This," he said, tapping the glass, "reminds me that you are not a transaction. You are everything. This was the single most selfish and most important thing I have ever done." I looked at him, at this beautiful, broken, and powerful man who had torn down his world and his family's to keep me safe, who had just cried because my daughter had called him dad. The anger was gone. The shame was gone. All that was left was this deep, profound, unbreakable truth. I didn't say anything. I put my wine glass down. I reached up and cupped his face, his 5 o'clock shadow rough against my palms. I kissed him. It wasn't a desperate, blood and tears on the floor kiss. It wasn't the raw, claiming passion of our first nights. It was slow. It was deep. It was a kiss of absolute, unspoken certainty. It was a kiss that said, "I know all of you, every dark corner, every lie, every mistake, and I am still here." I pulled back, just enough to look him in the eyes. I took his hand, the one that still had the faint, silvery scar on the knuckles, the one I had bandaged. I pressed it flat against my chest, right over my heart. "That day," I whispered, my voice steady, "in the bakery, you looked at the cashier and you said, 'She's with me.'" His eyes were full. "You said it to save me," I continued. "You said it as a claim, a declaration to protect me." "I did," he rasped. "I know," I said. I pressed his hand harder against my heart. "This time, I'm saying it. I'm saying it to you. I'm with you. Dante, not because you rescued me, not because you're protecting me, but because you're you. Because I'm yours. I'm with you." His hand trembled beneath mine. He didn't speak. He leaned in and pressed his forehead against mine, his eyes squeezing shut. He was home. We left the study, his arm wrapped tightly around my waist, my head on his shoulder. We walked into the living room, the moonlight streaming in from the glass wall, painting the floor in silver. On the small, worn wood side table, next to a stack of books, was a small, velvet box, a black one. It was open. Inside, a ring. It wasn't a diamond the size of my fist. It wasn't the kind of thing Amelia Harrington would have worn. It was a simple platinum band with a single, perfect sapphire, the color of his eyes. I stopped. I looked at it. He didn't say anything. He didn't point to it. He just waited. It wasn't a proposal, not an official one, and there was no bended knee. There was no question. It was just a fact, a promise, left open on a table. It was for now, for when the world was finally, truly quiet. I smiled, I reached out and I touched the velvet, then I took his hand, and we walked away from it. We didn't need it, not yet. We had tonight. Peace. I hadn't known what it truly felt like. It was this. It was 2 weeks later. We were at the cabin. It wasn't just his cabin anymore. It was ours. I'd been working on it. I'd softened the hard edges. I'd added warm rugs, deep, comfortable sofas. I'd filled the shelves with Ava's books and my design sketches. I had made it a home. It was a Sunday. We were making dinner, together. There were no bodyguards. There were no black SUVs idling at the end of the long, gravel driveway. There were no more threats. Paolo was gone. His network was dismantled. The rumors about Dante had faded, replaced by gossip about the new, flashy CEO of Romano Systems. We were forgotten. We were just a family. Dante was at the stove, stirring a pot of pasta sauce. The recipe. It had been his mother's. He'd taught it to me. I was at the counter, tearing lettuce for a salad. Ava was at the dining table, meticulously and very crookedly, setting out 3 plates. "Mommy," she called, "do we need the big forks or the little forks?" "Big forks, baby," I called back, smiling at Dante's back. He turned, a wooden spoon in his hand. He had a smudge of tomato sauce on his cheek. I walked over, laughing, and wiped it away with my thumb. He caught my hand, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He was about to kiss me, and the doorbell rang. We froze. It wasn't a polite, neighborly chime. It was a sharp, insistent ding-dong. Dante's smile vanished. The ice. It was back. Instantly. He put a hand on my waist, moving me behind him. "Dante?" I whispered. "Ava," he said, his voice a low, hard command. "Go to your room, now." "But..." "Now, Ava!" She'd heard that tone before. She didn't argue. She just ran. The doorbell rang again. It's probably just a delivery," I stammered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "We're not expecting one," he said. He walked to the door. He didn't look through the peephole. He stood there. He listened. I heard nothing, just the wind in the pines outside. He unlocked the deadbolt. He opened the door. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a threat. It was a woman. She was small, thin. She looked like me. She looked like a stray. She was wearing a thin jacket. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were wide with a terror so profound it made my stomach clench. She looked lost. I'm sorry," she stammered, clutching a crumpled envelope in her hand. Are you Dante Romano?" Dante stared at her. He was still tense, but the immediate threat was gone. Who are you?" My name doesn't matter," she said, her voice shaking. I was at a shelter in Milwaukee. A woman, an older woman. She gave this to me. She said it was important. She said she was sick. She said I had to find you." She held out the envelope. Dante didn't move. "Please," the woman begged, tears welling in her eyes. She gave me $500 to bring this. She said it was life or death." Dante looked at her. He looked at the envelope. He slowly, carefully, took it from her hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice flat. "Wait here." He walked. He didn't walk. He stalked. Back to the kitchen. He grabbed a knife from the block. Not to attack. To open the letter. He slid it open. I was right at his side. His hands, for the first time since I had met him, his hands were shaking. He pulled out a single, folded piece of paper. It was old, yellowed. It was a child's drawing, a stick figure of a boy with black hair and a smaller girl with black hair, holding hands. The sun was in the corner. And at the bottom, a single scrawled sentence, in a child's handwriting, me and D. My hand flew to my mouth. Dante. Tucked inside the drawing was a small, folded note, a new one, written in a shaky, elderly hand. Dante read it. I watched his face. I saw the blood. I saw all the color, all the life, all the peace we had just found. I saw it drain away. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. He didn't speak. He handed me the note. I took it. My hands were trembling. "I am a nurse," it read. "I worked at a private facility. For 30 years, a girl was brought in. A long time ago, a child, no name, no memory. They said she was gone, but she wasn't. They've had her all this time. They kept her. I'm dying. I can't keep the secret. Her name, she whispers it sometimes. Alara, your sister, she may still be alive." My knees, I grabbed the counter. Alara, his sister, alive. I looked up at him. He wasn't the man, and he was the boy. The 16-year-old boy who was 10 minutes late. The guilt, the pain, it was all back. But this time, it was mixed with a wild, terrifying, and impossible hope. He was going. He wouldn't even breathe until he knew. This was the one thing, the one ghost he had to face. He turned. He started walking toward the door, toward the woman, toward the past. I didn't even think. I ran. I grabbed his hand. He stopped. He looked at me. His eyes were, they were 1,000,000 miles away. "Dante," I whispered, my voice raw. "I have to," he breathed. "I know," I said. I tightened my grip. "If you go, I go." He looked at me, really looked at me. He saw me, his anchor, his partner. He brought my hand to his lips, his eyes never leaving mine. He kissed my knuckles. He turned, pulling me with him. Then we go together. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey with Sienna and Dante. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment and say hello. For more stories just like this, make sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories. And finally, let me know what you thought of this one. What was your favorite part? Share your thoughts in English. I read every single one. Thank you again.